Hello, guys. And if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. Today our story from the user Gazwext, and it is called I, 50F, have never met my ex-boyfriend's 50F daughter, 21F, but she seems to think we're friendly and is asking for career advice. How do I tell her that her father and I are not as friendly as she seems to think? Story. 20 years ago, I left a long-term relationship. It did not end amicably. I discovered he had been cheating. He denied that it qualified as cheating, and you can probably guess how unproductive that discussion was. Well, quite simply, he turned out not to be the man I thought he was. I was heartbroken and grieved for a long time. I've had no contact with him since we ended things, but life goes on. I picked up the pieces, got my PhD, and met an incredible, wonderful woman to whom I am now married. We have a child, and I can honestly say my family is the best thing in my life, and objectively speaking, the best thing in the universe. I work as a researcher and in a very niche subfield, to the point where the people who collaborate with each other in this subfield can probably be counted on your fingers and toes. It's not unusual for me to get emails from people I've never met, asking about particulars of research I've contributed to, especially from young women who are oftentimes overwhelmed by how many men there are in the field and feel more comfortable reaching out to another woman. If you are interested in my subfield, which not many people are, it's pretty easy to find me and contact me via the email alias my institution has set up for me. About 1.5 years ago, I received an email from a young woman I didn't know. The email said she was a student at an institution that has several people I've worked with on staff, and that she was interested in research in my field. She asked some fairly standard questions about some research I had contributed to a few years previously. She then said she was the daughter of my ex-boyfriend's, and that he said hello. I honestly wasn't sure what to make of it, and partially thought it was some bizarre joke, and because I was extremely busy at that time, I simply never replied. A few weeks ago, I was attending a small research symposium where a few of my colleagues were presenting their work. I was just there as moral support, and for the free coffee and snacks, not to present anything myself. But I was chatting with a few other people I knew who were introducing me to their students, cracking bad jokes about each other's work, etc. I was approached by a young woman who introduced herself, and before I could try and place her name, she mentioned that she was the one who had sent me the email last year. I immediately remembered, because I remembered thinking of her email as bizarre. I tried to remain professional, and the young woman herself was very polite and didn't raise any red flags. But after she talked a little bit about her research interests, she again mentioned that she was my ex-boyfriend's daughter, and that he talks about me all the time. At that point, I had to drop the professional act, said I had work to get to, and since all my colleagues had finished presenting, I just left. I told my wife everything that night. I hadn't told her about the initial email because I figured it was a bizarre one-off. But this made me feel uncomfortable, so I wanted to ask her advice. She initially had the same questions I did about the whole situation. How do I know this person is who she says she is? Etc. And then after thinking about it for a little while, simply said that I should do whatever my gut says. Well, that night I checked my email before going to bed, to find that a colleague I frequently collaborate with had sent me an email of introduction for this young woman. The email mentioned, "It looks like you previously worked with her father. It's a small world." Not verbatim, but that's the gist. I met my ex-boyfriend through work, and recommended her for a summer research position at my institution. I showed my wife, who raised her eyebrows but didn't say anything, and then set it aside and didn't reply. It's now been a few weeks since then, and the young woman recently emailed me again, asking if she could talk to me about research. No mention of the ex-boyfriend this time. I'm unsure of what to do here. Ignoring her is the simple answer, but the subfield is so small and she appears to be my colleague's prize student. I don't want to cause any awkwardness in any working relationships if I ignore this, but I also don't want to talk about something that happened in my personal life over 20 years ago. My wife thinks I should just ignore her, and we've talked about what either course of action would look like, replying to this woman or ignoring her. but she's left the decision up to me. I don't know anyone who handled anything like this, so I thought I would seek advice here. Comment 1 from user Miss Rochenbear. Being that it's such a small field and that you are genuinely interested in bettering circumstances for your female peers, I don't see why you would take any stance other than to treat her as well as you would any other aspiring up-and-comer. I would simply communicate to her that your relationship with her father was not as good for you as he seems to describe it, and that you are willing to help her professionally, but have no interest in revisiting that time in your life or having anything to do with her father going forward. If she wants to know why, it's simply not her business. Keep it professional. It seems she'd been led to believe that your relationship had been better than it was, so why wouldn't she try to use that angle to be seen in a good light by you? She's wrong, and that's unfortunate, but not really her fault. She seems to actually be interested in your field, and you are a valuable resource. While it's possible her father pushed her to approach you in this way for his own reasons, to possibly reconnect with you, or to hurt you in some way. But once the record is set straight, without delving into details, I do hope that she will drop the subject and be professional herself. I cannot pretend to comprehend the pain he caused you, and its resurfacing is the last thing that you would want, but it's happened and might continue to. Shielding yourself from her is an option, and it might be the right one. But I truly think it's in your best interest to address it with her. Details are not necessary. Your field requires intelligence, so I must assume she has some. But considering how small this field is and how you may be tangentially in each other's orbit for at least another about 15 years, there may be a high likelihood that you may actually run into your ex at some conference, symposium, or other event that he's attending in support of his daughter. I imagine you would not want this. Notifying her of your conflict with him may be enough for her to discourage him from attending, or at the very least, if your report is good, she may be able to warn you ahead of time, allowing you to maneuver the situation till you protect yourself. On the other hand, interacting with her directly may be too much for you. Just sharing my opinions on the internet. Update 1. I think I was hesitant to engage with her because she seemed eager to try and add a personal dimension to our relationship by mentioning her father. I won't get into the details here, but her father is not a time period in my life I want to revisit. You're right. She did seem genuinely interested in the field, and I can't fault her for that. I will try to link her up with as many resources as possible, but I simply cannot be a personal mentor for her. I cannot risk having her father in my life again, for my own safety and that of my family. I will connect her with a colleague who is far more accomplished than I am, and recuse myself from being involved with summer research by scheduling some extended leave. I don't want to cast a shadow over such a pivotal moment in her career by explaining to her why exactly I do not want to engage with her. So I think I will simply divert her attention to someone else and calmly disengage. That's a good point. I think I will have to talk to her eventually, probably in person, so nothing is lost in translation. She seems like a good kid, and I know how hard I worked when I was her age. Things are even harder for students these days, so she's probably working twice as hard. Thanks for looking out me, internet stranger. It's good to know there are some kind, thoughtful people on here. Comment 2 from user Hats and Topcoat. The best suggestion I can come up with is to treat her the way you would treat someone you don't really like, but need to be civil to, and also need to avoid the appearance of unfair discrimination. So, for example, if you can reasonably say that your research positions are already taken, then use that stance. If your colleagues would know that's BS, then don't. But it sounds like you should expect that you will have to interact with her in some respect, given how small the field is. I'd recommend completely ignoring who her father is, and if she says something that forces you to acknowledge it, downplay it as much as possible. Dad talks about you all the time. Oh, is that so? Excuse me, I need to go feed the fish. Dad would love to chat with you sometime. Oh, I'm not sure I'd be able to find the time. Let me ask you, have you met Dr. Blah Blah? She may have a suggestion on that problem you're having. If she's not an idiot, it seems likely she'd get the hint, and may have already gotten it since she didn't mention him in her last email. I'd steer clear on ever explicitly telling her that you have bad memories of her father, because it creates the risk of making you look like you have a petty grudge against her. Comment 3 from user Flat Deuce. I remember trying to make connections for my last leap in grad school. I can't tell you how discouraging it was to be ghosted by dozens of people whose research I followed and reached out to. I had to take the only thing that opened up to me, a backdoor connection through my master's advisor's former master's advisor at the university from which he'd not quite retired. And I can't imagine how much worse it would have been in a niche field. This poor kid likely doesn't know the full truth about her dad and you, and was just hoping to find an in or common ground with you. I'm sure her dad does speak well of you, since he's the one who did you wrong. It's been 20+ years and you're still carrying so much baggage from that relationship that you can't muster the courtesy of a response to someone this far down an education career path in which you're well established. You might need therapy for this, or more of it if you've already done it. Minimally, you should offer this kid a reply, wishing her well in her career and maybe make other referrals, but state that you wish to have no further engagement with her due to her father and how he treated you in the past. Update 2. Most likely I will simply take some extended leave this summer so I don't have any input on selections for research positions and refer her to a colleague who can give her all the information she needs. Hopefully the timelines work out so she is taken care of and I do not have to interact with her. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you again.